Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back. So today I'm going to be reviewing the new Daydream palette from Alter Ego. And if you haven't seen this one yet, it's actually a dupe for the Huda Beauty New Nude palette. So I know there's a couple of dupes floating around out there. I really haven't tried any of them so far. So this is my first dupe for the Huda New Nudes. It's $18 and I also have an affiliate code with them. So you can save an extra 10%, which brings it down to $16.20, I believe. So I'll leave that on the screen and also down in the description box below. So today I'm going to be showing you swatches of both palettes side by side, talking a little bit about the formula and how they differ, and also doing this look that I'm wearing today. And I'm wearing one palette on one eye and one on the other. So as we're going throughout the video, try to guess which one is Daydream and which one is the New Nudes. All right, so here's the two palettes side by side. We have the Huda on the top and then the Alter Ego on the bottom. And the shades are arranged in a different order, and a couple of them don't look exactly alike in the pan. So I had to kind of play with them a little bit to try to figure out which ones matched. But for the most part, they really do look similar. The packaging looks really similar. The Huda one is slightly larger at 19, how many grams is this? Hold on one second, I had it. 19.7 grams total weight in this palette, while the Daydream one is 16.2. So they're close, but the Huda one does have a little bit more product inside. And one of the things that I think Alter Ego really nailed with this palette is all the textures that are in the Huda, because there's a few different things going on here. You have a lot of matte shades, but then you have these really interesting textured shimmer shades that almost are like a cream formula in the Huda, and they're very similar in this one as well, which you'll see in a few minutes. There's also one regular pressed shimmer, which is just kind of like your regular, everyday shimmer shade. And then you have these two glitter shades right here. So there's 4 different textures going on, 4 different formulas. So it makes for a very interesting palette. Oh, there's actually 5. There's also a concealer shade, which the Daydream palette included as well. Now, I was not a fan of that in the Huda palette. So again, I'm not really a fan of it in this one. I don't think I'll use it that often, and I don't like that it's just kind of sitting there open, because I feel like powder's gonna get into it and get it gunked up. Plus, the one that's in this palette now has dried out considerably, so I feel like the same thing is gonna happen to this one over time. But I know they were just trying to keep it consistent and keep it the same. I just really don't use it. I like to use my own concealer and just prep my eyelids the way that I normally do. So I didn't use it for this tutorial just because I wanted to do it exactly like I would do it normally. So let's go ahead now and get into some swatches. And I'm not gonna swatch the entire palette like side by side, because I wanna do them individually by texture, because there's just like too many differences to talk about if I do it all at once. So starting with those textured shimmer shades, in the Huda palette, like I said, these were my favorite shades because they're just so unique. A lot of people thought that they were glitters. They're actually not glitters. They're almost like a creamy base. They almost feel like the ColourPop Super Shocks, but they're not cream. They're still a powder. They're just like a super, super creamy powder. And they look like they're chunky, but when you swatch them, they're not actually. They do have quite a bit of shimmer to them. They almost give like a wet look on your eyes. So it's almost like having a regular shimmer shade that you then like wet your brush, and it makes that super intense foiled effect. That's what these are like. They're absolutely beautiful. But one thing that I did notice when comparing the Huda palette to the Daydream one is that these, I think, have started to dry out a little bit. Whatever's in them is making them really difficult to pick up now. They almost feel a little hard in the pan. So when I put my finger in it, it's kind of hard to get as much product. I mean, you can see that there's product on there, but then the Alter Ego one just feels so super soft in comparison, because it just feels kind of like the Huda ones used to. So it just kind of picks up a little bit more product and is easier to work with. Now, again, I think it's just because this one is older, and I'm kind of thinking the same thing may happen to this one eventually too. I'm not 100% sure, because maybe the formula is completely different, but that's just sort of what happened with this one, because I don't remember these ever being that difficult to pick up before. So just something to note, but I will show you swatches of them all side by side, and I think you're gonna see a little bit of a difference here just because the Huda one is a little bit more dried out now, so I wasn't able to pick up as much product. I had to really dig and dig. So I think color-wise, they did a really good job at matching up the shades. I didn't see a whole lot of difference there. All right, so then for the next group of swatches, I'm gonna swatch the 2 glitter shades and then the pressed shimmer. So first up, the pressed shimmer shade, I feel like in both palettes was really, really similar. I actually thought that the one in the Daydream palette was just slightly deeper and a little bit more pigmented than the one in the Huda palette. Again, I think that the one in the Daydream palette was just a little bit easier to pick up. And then when it comes to the glitter shades, I felt like the ones in the Daydream palette just held together so much better. Glitter shades don't normally swatch very well anyway, but the Huda ones kind of performed as I expected them to, where it started off strong and then just kind of trailed off. But the ones in the Alter Ego palette just really kind of held together somehow and really packed a punch. And even when I went to kind of spread the swatch out a little bit, they didn't get patchy and they just kind of went really evenly across my arm. So I was very, very impressed with the glitter shades in the Daydream palette. Not that the ones in the Huda are bad or that they're different than most other palettes that I have with glitter shades in them, but I just felt like the Daydream ones were kind of like an extra step above. And then when it comes to the matte shades, you're gonna see some definite differences as far as the swatches. Now, as far as pigmentation goes, I feel like they're both very, very similar. It's just that I thought that the Huda ones just blended really, really smoothly in a swatch. They're a very densely packed formula. They don't have a lot of kick up, whereas the Alter Ego ones, kind of like similar to their other palettes, are a little softer and more powdery. Now, this is all going to come down to your personal preference, because I, for one, love a more powdery soft shadow, and for a couple reasons. One, because I'm not a blending expert. I'm terrible at blending my eyeshadow, so I prefer to just have it kind of blend out really sheerly and then go back and add more as I want to. And another reason is because I'm fair-skinned, and sometimes when you pick up a color that's really dense and really pigmented, it goes on too dark or darker than I want it to, and then I have to work really hard to sheer it out. So I feel like it's easier with the softer shadows to just start out sheer and then build them up as I would like to. But that's just my personal preference. You guys might feel totally differently about it. So now let's go ahead and get into the demo, and I'll show you everything that I used to create this look today. So starting with the Alter Ego side, I picked up the shade Sun-Kissed with a crease brush, and I applied that just above my crease. I do have hooded eyes, so I like to go above my natural crease, kind of into where the socket is, and I blended that out. And it did grab a little bit where I first put it, so I had to kind of work to blend it out a little bit more than I normally would have. I'm not sure why, because the formula seems to be similar to their other palettes, but I also think that sometimes these cooler tone shades are a little bit harder to formulate than some of the warmer ones, so that could be a factor as well. Like sometimes pinks and purples and mauves can go on a little bit more patchy and be a little bit harder to blend for some reason. I think it's just like a formula thing. And then I also took a flat shader brush and applied that all over my eyelid as well. Then on the Huda side, I used the shade Teddy, which is the corresponding shade, and I felt like this one applied almost exactly the same. Even though it looks so much different in a swatch, I still felt like it did the same thing. It kind of grabbed a little bit in the beginning, and then I had to work to blend it out. But one thing I did notice is that I felt like the pigment on the Huda one was just slightly stronger, like just the tiniest little bit. No big deal, and like I said, I kind of prefer the less pigment, and I can go in and build it up if I want to. Also, I think color-wise, they look pretty much exactly the same on my eyes. Then next, to deepen up the outer corner, I took the shade Sugar Plum in the Daydream palette on a little pencil brush and applied that to the outer V. And this one, I felt like I had to, again, just add a little bit more and a little bit more. I had to keep dipping back into the palette and just building up the intensity, which is totally fine with me. I'm perfectly happy doing that. On the flip side, on the Huda palette, I used the shade Love Bite, which is the same shade. And this one was pigmented right out of the gate, and then I kind of had to work to blend it out a little. And I was a little bit nervous that I applied too much, actually. So this is, again, one reason why I tend to like the sheer shadows. So this one, I kind of felt like I had to overcorrect and then go back and try to blend it, whereas the Daydream one, I was just adding a little bit at a time until I got the result that I wanted. So next, I dipped into one of those textured shimmers, and I picked up the shade Fairy Tale on my finger from the Alter Ego palette and applied that right to my eyelid. And it went on super intense, like that really foiled wet effect. I didn't need to wet the shade at all. I just packed it right on, and it just applied so beautifully. I was really, really impressed with that one. And then on the Huda side, same thing. I used the shade Daydream, and this one, again, it was a little harder to pick up, and I felt like it went on a little bit more sheer. And strangely, I thought that this one actually, even though it wasn't as pigmented going on, it has a little bit more of like a wet look to it, whereas the Daydream one looks like a little more shimmery and glittery, but not necessarily as wet. So they're a little bit different in terms of the finish once they're on your eyes, but again, they did a really good job matching the color. I feel like they look really, really similar on the eyes. And then last but not least, I lined my lower lash line with the first crease shade that I used. So in the Daydream palette, that was Sun-Kissed, and then in the Huda palette, it was Teddy, and I just went all along my lower lash line with that one all the way to the outer corner. Then I finished up with a few coats of the Tarte Lights Camera Lashes mascara, and then here's the finished look, and I think that both eyes look incredibly similar. It's so hard to tell the difference between the two, even though I did have to build up some of the shades in the Alter Ego palette a little bit more. I think that they came out looking just as vibrant, and I also think that the colors are pretty much spot on, so they really nailed it again. I am so impressed with Alter Ego. So if you don't want to spend $65 on this one, I think for $18 you can get the exact same looks out of this palette. Like I said, you just might have to tweak the way that you use the formula a little bit, but actually I do tend to prefer this type of formula anyway, so I like this one a little bit better. Alright guys, so that's everything. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments below. Did you get it right? Did you know which eye was which? And also, have you gotten this yet? Have you tried it? I would love to hear your thoughts on it, and if you're planning on getting it, let me know that as well. Also, don't forget to use my code if you want to save an extra 10%, and Alter Ego also has free shipping over $25. So if you didn't get the Goddess palette yet, which is the dupe for the Natasha Denona Gold palette, or they also have the Temptress, which is a dupe for Anastasia's Sultry, then if you buy 2 palettes, you can get the free shipping. So I did do videos on both of those. I'll link them down below in case you haven't seen them yet. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.